So let's get kicked off. So today we're going to chat. I know it's in the diary for an hour. We'll not keep you for an hour. It just means people can hang about after if they want to ask questions. We'll be available for the hour, but the actual content won't take us that long. We're going to chat about using psychology experiments to improve our emails. So I say emails. I mean, to be honest, it can be applied to any sort of medium of cold outreach, but emails is the main thing we're going to focus on today. And then there's other data that from other experiments, maybe not psychology experiments as such, but just literally looking at the data to work out what actually works best because intuitively we're not always the best people to sort of guess and what works best. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a sort of lovely generic marketing email and then apply our logic as we learn from our experiments to see how we can make this better. So this is just an example, kind of something that you would see generally before, where you're just taking the sort of old CRM data, sending out a nice pretty email to say that you've launched your new microscope I'm using, and you're going to be demoing it in Boston next week. So that's where we're going to start here. And when we run through our experiments. I have a lovely poll just because I'm being all fancy and all. Let's see if it actually works before I show off lunch. Okay, this should now be up on your screen. So when you receive emails from like, companies, would you prefer to get it from like images and make it all like nice and laid out? Or would you rather have plain text? What do you think you as a kind of consumer would rather see? Thank you so much for the participation. We're up to 6%. People are being very good here and like take apart. I'll give another second. Okay, we've like, I think like 150 respondents, probably enough to be clinically significant. I'm not going to run that analysis, but so 74, can I show, do you see the results, Novin, or maybe I need to share it? So 70% of the respondents here, with over 150 responses, say that they prefer images whenever they come to getting those emails, and the others prefer the plain text. So if we have a look at the actual data, you can see here whenever you poll people, they absolutely say 70%. We were actually even, sort of in line with this response as well. They prefer the images, the HTML images versus the plain text. But when you actually look at the data, the more images you put into your email, the lower the actual click-through rate. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is take this lovely, beautiful email, and all the marketers are going to cry. But if you actually want the data if we believe the data and we want the conversions to actually happen, then let's change this into plain text. So we now have a nice plain text message, which has the same information, to be honest. It's just now in a better format based on what the data said. I don't really need to tell you about experiments or data when it comes to personalization. You guys will know this yourselves. If you'll note, I have spelt personalization incorrectly, given my audience is predominantly US based. So I have personalized it to you guys, even though it hurts me a bit. But basically, if you tailor it to the people that you're presenting to, that's obviously going to make a better impact. And you can see it here in the data. So you have 6 times more likely to drive a conversion on an email if you're taking the time to personalize it. 73% of people actually say that they'll only deal with a brand if they actually personalize it, and the revenue is 5.7 times higher. So I mean, everyone knows. I don't need to convince you of that. It's just like how do we actually do that? So personalization is making it relevant, making it timely, and making sure that it like comes from an actual person. So relevance first. We have no excuse in our industry to not make it relevant. There is so much free publicly available data that will allow us to do this. And I'm going to give you a few free examples. People that have SciLeads obviously have it a lot easier. Those that don't, here are free examples that allow you to personalize your email. So Google Scholars, pop in microscopy, find out anyone it's tricky to find out the people in Boston, but find out the people that are actually doing research in microscopy and personalize your emails based on that. Go on to the actual website of, Boston the university and look at all the people in that actual university, look at the PIs, tailor your messaging. There are the contact details there. Slightly cumbersome, but absolutely free, and absolutely you can do it. If you are dealing more on the biotech and pharma side, pop into LinkedIn. Again, this is a free version. This isn't SalesNav. put in microscopy, people in Boston, people in Pfizer. There's a list of the people that are available to you in Pfizer. So really, like, we have no excuse whatsoever in order to do that. The same thing as well in terms of timeliness. So having a really relevant email, but if it's not a right time, isn't actually as powerful either. Timeliness, what we mean there is go into any reporter, probably a like trigger word right now for this very second, but that's another webinar in itself. Um, did they get a grant? Have they actually got funding? That is what would make it timely and again allows you to personalize it further. If you again said to Bioforma, here is the free version of Crunchbase. They actually have a really cool AI thing where I just said, show me the companies recently funded. It gave me a list of 4. Like 4 isn't great, but still there's 4 that allow you to do that. So again, absolutely no excuse using the free versions of everything that you can't personalize your email and make it timely. Obviously, if you've got SciLeads, I have to say, then you type in microscopy and you've got 1.5 million people and it's timely and personalized, but you know, people that have SciLeads on the webinar know this already. And then make sure that it comes from a person. So with all of these in mind, we're going to update then our email. So now we're going to say hi first name. The funny story actually about this presentation is this is actually real. So I did this when I sold microscopy products before we started SciLeads. And it was myself and Dan. I was a salesperson and Dan was the marketing person. And we absolutely mucked up the first mail merge. We'd never done one before. We just Googled it. That's actually why the biggest blog in the SciLeads website is a mail merge blog because I couldn't find one and I made one at the time and it still drives most of the traffic to our site. But anyway, we completely mucked it up because we were like in our early 20s and we'd never done it before. And we accidentally wrote hi salutations. We wrote like hi doctor, hi mister, hi missus. And we got loads of meetings. So we then iterated from that using exactly the A/B testing that we're going to go through now and the psychology experiments and actually just not completely mucking up. But yeah, that's so this is like actually legitimately real. This is what we used to do, and this is why we created SciLeads to make it easier to do. But anyway, so I'll be in Boston next week, so I wanted to talk to you now that, you know, we can tailor it for their microscopy background because we know that from those free sources or from SciLeads that they're interested in microscopy. I've said I want it from a real person, so I've made myself an application specialist because quite honestly, that's what the scientists want. So if you are going to be setting up meetings before shows or trying to meet them, they do prefer to speak to scientists rather than salespeople. So it's just something to consider if that is available to you. Even if you are a salesperson but you have a PhD, like having your doctor beside your name is actually going to really help increase conversions as well if you're selling to scientists. And then you'll see here that I have my US phone number. I'm based in Belfast, as you can hear from the accent. Hopefully everyone's still following the accent. But I pay $8 a month for a US number because again, that's where a lot of our customers are based. So it makes sense to personalize that to them so that they say, okay, this is something that is relevant to me. I like to use posters. I find it's the best hook. So if we did a generic your microscopy background, that's great. You could do it on funding where it's like, hey, I see that you just got 3 million for a microscope. Can I have some? Probably not the best approach in my opinion. If it were me, I would use the fact that they received funding or they got VC investment as the trigger. But actually, in terms of the content, a beautiful way to do it is the posters. So this again is slightly trickier to do manually, but you could do it a bit where if you went through like all the AACR posters or all the bio posters, for example, you could find people that are there that tailor it. Obviously, we do this really well internally in SciLeads because we track those 2,500 posters and put it on their profiles. But being able to reference that in the message, it's so personalized and it's saying why you're actually reaching out to them. And it will completely change the conversion. The other interesting thing about posters is it's all well and good to talk about the content of the email, but if nobody actually opens it, then what's the point? So like 47% of people say that they decide whether to open an email or not based on the subject line alone. I personally decide in about 100%, maybe not. I do look at the name a bit, but mostly it's the subject line. So having these 3 things optimized is really important. So your name, you can't do an awful lot about, but your name, just make sure it's your actual name rather than like an email address or something like that there and make sure it's set up properly. Your subject header is huge because that's what's going to determine whether they're going to open it or not. And again, the opening line is really helpful as well because it depends what sort of email client they use that they'll be able to see that whether they're on their phone or not. So personalizing these makes a huge difference as well. So you can see here, Plenty did a lovely report where they saw that the open rate for personalized subject lines goes up with doubles basically. So having a think about how you can personalize that subject line is really useful. And again, that's where that poster comes in really well. And absolutely, you could include their publication, you could include their funding if you wanted to. I just, if you email someone about a poster that they did or doing it like ACR or SOT or whatever they're doing it on, they know they're actually presenting that. They say that. They know that's super tailored to them. They might even think that it's like something to do with their actual poster that they presented, and they're going to be inclined to actually open the message. And then they can see your lovely content that you've optimized. So it's something definitely to consider putting in terms of tailoring your subject line, whatever way that you can. Novin, feel free to interrupt me if appropriate. If not, we'll sort of keep this and go through the questions at the end. I have
Yeah,
a
no
quick
problem.
example.
Go
Quick
ahead.
example here from Marima, one of our clients who they did a really great example of this. So they took, I don't know if everyone gets my biopharma newsletter that I send at the beginning of every Monday. They took that, they ran it through their lovely AI and completely personalized the messages that they sent out to the same list that you all get. And they had a 17% response rate, not open rate, response rate to their first email. And we'll talk about like, multiple follow-ups in the future, but their first email was 17%, which is incredible. It's completely like anti the averages of generally that are seen across the industry. And I actually need to catch up with them because this is quite recent to see what happens if they actually have more emails being sent out. But it's just a beautiful example of a customer in our space that are using this and really getting the benefit of it. So back to our nice psychology experiment. So we've got do you know when you're in a hotel and they've got a wee card that says like save the planet, please reuse your towels? These guys did an experiment where they tried to get more people to reuse their towels. So they added an extra line that said most people in this hotel reuse their towels. And they got the maids, they kindly agreed to just basically count how many people reused their towels and didn't. And there was a 26% increase of people reusing their towels just simply by saying most people do it. Another nice example of kind of just saying everyone else is doing it. There's a girl called Colleen. I just remember that one obviously because it means girl in Irish. And she completely like smashed all the targets for these sort of like QVC type channels. We don't really have them in Ireland, but they're very popular I hear over in the US. And they basically what she did is instead of at the bottom where it was like, our callers are waiting, she changed that to said if our callers are whatever you call them, if our colleagues are busy, please call back. If our number is busy, please call back. Which doesn't sound intuitively good. It sounds like you're actually putting an obstacle up for people to actually buy your product, but it just like smashed all of the targets that have ever been set. And it just again throws if people feel everybody else is doing it and it's like a scarce commodity, then they're going to want to do it as well. It sort of just gives you that social proof. So with that in mind, then we're going to change our email here to say that I have limited availability as I'm meeting your colleagues, but I'd be delighted to meet you and when I'm over in Boston. So that's well and good. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gong. I should have had the sources, trying to my best to make sure that I had the sources and all of my graphs. I'll add them in when I share the slides after. Gong they do like call recording and email recording, and they have just a wealth of data and they're able to run really nice analytics. I don't subscribe to any newsletters at all apart from Gong. I just think it's the most interesting because it's just pure data. So what they found is when you have a specific call to action, the conversion is much higher. There is a bit of a caveat here. If it's a pure cold, out of the blue email, if you're messaging someone, actually asking them if they're interested gives a better response rate than a specific call to action with a day and a time for a call. That's like seen as too presumptuous. Our example that we're doing now, though, given that that's actually a meeting, is something that you want to go and meet them, and there is sort of like a timeline here, having a specific call to action will increase your response rate. So it depends on the content of your email. So now what we want to do is have a specific call to action in terms of the time and the date of when they're going to meet them. So we still have a limited availability because everybody loves this and we're super busy and all. But we could do 10, 11, 3:30, which would you prefer? Choice is a very interesting one, and it's something that funnily, and a lot of these you can apply to your life as well as when you're sending an email. There was a beautiful example that they did. They set up a stall with jams. And basically, every single time they reduced the number of jams at the stall, the amount of people that bought one went up by 2%. So choice paralysis is a huge thing when someone's standing in front of it and they just don't know what to do. There was another example, one of the big four consultancy companies, they rolled out a new pension program. And I mean, it's a no-brainer to enroll in the pension program. They were the ones that were going to give you the contribution, but every time they had too many options, fewer people actually opted in, even though it was absolute free money. And the more they reduced it, the higher the opt-in rate went in. And um, Head and Shoulders are a great example as well. So there was a new boss came in and he reduced the range from like 26 down to 6, and it increased sales by 10%. And I think we've all been standing in that row, that aisle in the supermarket and trying to work out what one that we should possibly buy and what is the difference. So I think we can all kind of resonate with that. But again, same with your customers. Let's not give them as many options because we don't want choice paralysis. We want to just be very concise. My trick for this was to say that I have 2 meeting slots remaining. So super busy and awesome and everybody wants to meet me, so you should too. Would you prefer Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning? And this is quite nice because honestly, I would have no meetings before I sent this email. But if I said, do you want 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. and everyone says like 10 p.m. because I mean I'm sending this to like 300 people, then I'm like snookered because I've got like 10 meetings at 10 a.m. If you say afternoon or morning, you can just start to slot them in. So you've got 10, 11, 12, whatever your cadence is, depending on how long your meetings are. And if that means you have to eat your lunch at 8 a.m. because your day is full, or honestly, to be honest, statistically speaking, with like 9 meetings, one was probably going to cancel. So that's when you're at your lunch. That's what I used to do. And this is a really nice because it gives them little choice, but you still have flexibility and you're not letting them know that like you're super free. So that's an important one. Even for the startups in the call, or even not the startups in the call, if you have like a meeting link in your email and prospects click on that and they say that you're open all day, that's like so off-putting. That just looks like you don't have any customers and nobody's interested. So really kind of narrowing those down and making sure that you have like flexibility, but it isn't just open is really important. The tiles is an interesting one, right? Because they then take it a step further. So the 26% was our increase whenever we just said like, most people do this. If they took it a step further and said most people in this room do it, then it went up to 33%, which makes no sense because you don't care. Like you've nothing really in common with the person that was in the room before you. If anything, I don't really want to think about it. There could be something to be said about you feel like someone's watching you and then therefore you're going to do something. So that might be part of it. But having something very specific to you, whether it's actually relevant to you or not, it makes you even more likely to respond. So this is really important when it comes to like case studies, testimonials. If you're giving someone a case study or a testimonial, give them something really specific to their science. Give them, if it's an Italian person you're dealing with, give them a fellow Italian. You'll have something that's really specific to them. It's really important so that people feel that this is for them. So with that in mind, I change all of my emails to actually be, I'll be in insert institution of the person I'm emailing. Because again, it plays into a few different things. It plays into having it very personalized like that, but also it kind of comes back to that everyone else is doing it. So you're obviously in that institution to meet other people. And if you personalize your call to actions, that also makes them more likely to click on it. So if then we say, here's a link to a publication by one of your colleagues, it's specific to you, it's very relevant to microscopy, please take a read. So you're personalizing your call to action as well. However, as you probably will know intuitively, if you put in more than one call to action, kind of back to your choice thing, then your likelihood of them actually doing anything goes down. So having one clean call to action is like night and day in terms of having people actually click or respond. So what we'll do then is we'll just say that we've attached that publication. We still want to tailor it to them. We still want to make it specific to them, but we want to just have our one call to action, which is that we want to meet. If your email is about getting them to read the case study, that's fine. If you want to bring them to your website for whatever reason and throw a cookie on them or whatever, if that's your campaign, fine. But pick one and stick to it. And in this case, in our email, it's would you like to meet? And in terms of where your call to action is, now remember that most people, and think about yourselves, are ingesting their emails on their phones, and there's definitely less real estate on your phone when it comes to writing an email. So making sure, and they call it above the fold, so not having to scroll down to see the main points of the email, because that's the first sort of look at it is what that's going to determine whether they keep reading or bother to scroll down. You could feel like you want to put the call to action up above the fold just so that they know it's there and not have to scroll down to it. But actually, the data says that will have a 17% decrease in your actual click-through rates. So people want to see all of the information before they make that decision on whether they want to actually click and go forward. So with that in mind, we need to rejig our email here a wee bit and have our call to action here at the bottom. So we'll still have, our nice case study up there, but now our call to action is at the bottom. One thing I'll say is, and this maybe comes into play more than follow-up, that is a very clear call to action. But what I see all the time are people they'll say something like, is this of interest, question mark? Let me know. Or did you get chatting to your boss? Let me know if I can send anything through. And like you kind of like neutralize your question with another sentence, because it's kind of all like it's like our nature as well. We don't want to be like rude, but really what you want to do is leave that question hanging there so that they have to reply to that. Because if you neutralize it with something else, it's not as clear that they need to reply to that. So just do your best to just have that question mark be the very final thing on your email if you can, just so that they're much more likely to respond. There's some things that the data just tells us, and I just believe it because they've done all of the research, and this is another gong one. So hope this finds you well. I actually used to do this even before I saw this research, mostly because when I was actually sending these I'd like to meet you emails, I didn't split it between people I'd met before and new prospects, partly because I didn't even know or remember who I'd met before. So having the I hope that this finds you well kind of implies that you know them. So it kind of covers both options. You know what I mean? If they receive the email, it kind of looks like you're messaging someone that you know and met someone that you don't know. So we're gonna just use the data, pop that in there, and leave them. Now we've sent your email. We've done a great job. And actually, that's just the beginning, because you can see here at Continuum did this beautiful case study where they sent this lovely email and they got absolutely zero responses whatsoever on their first email, which is absolutely normal. And it's something that we see a lot in SciLeads whenever we send our initial email to meet people out at conferences. So absolutely keep going. There was another case study of a guy who sent 43 unrequited or unresponded to emails, got the meeting on the 43rd, and it was actually an investor who invested in his company. So there is an argument to not stop until you get a no, basically, because people, they're not disinterested, they're just busy. If you've done your email well, I know it costs money to send emails, so there's a balance somewhere. But keeping going, one of our customers this week told me about my colleague Maddie, and I jumped on a call, and she said I took this call because Maddie was politely persistent, which I thought was a really, really nice way to put it as well. That's what we would like to be seen as, politely persistent. That The other thing in emails though, and the follow-ups, you don't want to just be replying to be like thoughts question mark or like did you see my email? Did you receive my yes, they of course they received your email before. Why would they receive your second one if they didn't receive your first one? It's just laziness. So, and then the data shows this as well from Gong. If you take the time to actually send a longer follow-up, people will respond to that. And, you know, reminding them as well that they didn't reply is never a good thing, which we'll come to in a second. So taking the time to actually send those emails, if you can, try to get like value in every email. And I know that's tough, but if you're emailing a scientist, saying like, oh, I saw that you got this publication, and then your next email, I saw that you were presenting at, ASHD, or I saw that, you were part of this webinar, or being able to like have like important information in each email and really taking the time to do that is really important. There's another experiment they did in with petrified wood in one of the big, I should know the name of it, but one of the big places in forests in America. What they found was that people were stealing. So 3% of the people that attended were stealing the wood. So they put up a sign and they said, "Yous are all stealing the wood, and there's going to be no wood left. We'll just stop at place." And the theft went up to 8% because everyone was like, "Oh well, everyone else is doing it, and like it was obviously fine, and it's going to run out, so like I better do it." So instead, they changed the wording that said, most people don't do it, and that went down then to 1.5%. And this is something that I see a lot in emails. So people will reply and say, "You didn't reply to my last email." All that's doing is telling me that I've already made a decision not to reply, and I'll not even bother thinking about it. Or I messaged your colleagues and I'm trying you now. Or this is obviously not a good time to, like, all you're doing there is telling me that it's okay to not respond to you. And it's funny how often this happens even in marketing campaigns. I don't know if anyone here from in the UK, there's a bus that goes around about giving blood, and it says 99% of people don't give blood. And it's like, well, then, if no one else is doing it, why would I do it? It's such a negative way to do it. It just means people that kind of regress the mean. So thinking about that whenever you're emailing, that means if you're sending an email and a follow-up, don't send them the big long thread of your other 10 emails. Absolutely send the other 10 emails, but delete out those 10 emails in the thread and just have your original email and your follow-up above. You're not reminding them that they've already decided not to reply to you, and that's the norm and that's acceptable. Another interesting one, again, that kind of just need from the data. If you say, I've left your voicemail, then the conversion is higher. This is probably because, again, you've just taken the time, just literally taken the time to send them a message. And it also kind of proves that you're not a bot, which is a big thing now because users are probably sitting being like, AI can totally do this. And we got away with sequences and things like that more in the last, even 2 years ago. You kind of could get away with it a bit more because people weren't really as aware of it, but now it's just so prevalent. Everything you do, you just need to be asking yourself, read every email you send and be like, does that sound like it could have been automated? And it's where that personalization comes in, and it's not lazy personalization that AI can do, like proper personalizing it. Maybe that's, using the network of somebody to say that, I know that you work with so and so, something like that to make sure that it's actually real personalization. Make a typo in it, you know, curse, you maybe can't get away with it if you're not Irish. Put a few emojis in, something that just sort of shows that it's like a different it's an actual person that has written it. There was one example when I was reaching out to people to meet them at neuroscience, and I accidentally put in that it was in DC instead of in San Francisco because I was going to that many shows and I didn't know where I was going in America. And everyone replied. It's the biggest response I've ever had to any email because they're all like, "You're wrong." And everyone loves when you're wrong. They just love to find people. But I made 3 sales alone from that email just simply because they wanted to reply because it kind of stood out. And we're so polished these days, and it goes through three not here in SciLeads, but for you guys probably it goes through like three marketing people to get it signed off to make sure there's no typos. So it's actually quite nice whenever someone does just muck up. So if you kind of go back to your roots a bit, it will actually really help. And yeah, make sure that you're not looking like your AI. And All that being said, having wonderful emails and wonderful outreaches is all well and good, but if you need to have the underlying data quality to be good as well. So this is just a nice quick example from one of our clients, Pine. Neil does these fabulous webinars and has done for years and years. He was using his old sort of database in terms of the people that he emails and the people that attends. And he switched then to use our SciLeads database in order to do the webinars. You could see there that the conversions were just higher across the board. So all well and good getting all of your lovely psychological experiments in your IB testing, but having actual good data and fresh data underlying it always helps as well. So that was me. I was doing my very best to get the content done in half an hour in case anyone needs to run off, but we do have time for questions. I can see that there's quite a few of them coming through. I'll be able to help with these as well. I'll run down here. Will there be recording available? Yes, and we'll also actually go through the we'll do write it up as well for people that prefer to actually read things rather than watching them. Could you please review once more the different reasons to either use a specific call to action or keep it general? Okay. So whenever you're doing very, very cold outreach, what the data shows is if you say, is this of interest? And again, I'd probably put both graphs into the slides actually before I send them out. If it's a cold one and you're saying, is this of interest? That actually is the best call to action. Because rather than you know yourself, if you get a completely cold email being like, yeah, hey, I do this, will we meet on Tuesday? You're like, hey, hold on a second, mate, I don't even know what is going on. So that's much better to ask, is this of interest? But if you already are engaged with them, if you're doing a follow-up with them, if you are doing a sort of outreach for a meeting, then you're going to be better actually putting a time and date because again, it comes down to partly that sort of not quite choice paralysis, but them not having to think. So they just say yes or no. They don't need to worry about it too much. The other interesting things about call to actions is if you can try to increase urgency in them, you get a much, much better response as well. So with a visit, it's easy because there is an urgency there because it's a visit. Whereas if you're kind of doing a general one, having something like, this link expires within 2 days or something, or my colleague is going on holiday, but we'd love to meet with you. Something like that to just increase that urgency really makes a big difference in your call to actions. Is it better to place a request for a meeting before telling the reason for a meeting with the subject line being enough to keep their interest right through the invite request to get to what the meeting will be about? I mean, the subject line is exactly what's going to make them open the email. Then it's up to yourselves again to have, the content there to say what the meeting's about. In my example, I generally didn't talk that much about, and this is just what I used to do whenever I set up meetings. It was about a new microscope or a new camera for the microscope. That was enough for them to determine whether this was useful or not. So for me, that was okay. For everyone else, you'll need to just have a wee think about what works for you. Having something where you rise above the noise is really helpful. So an example would be like in SciLeads, we obviously have the data for the upcoming IACR show, and we genuinely have the data for that because we track the posters and the talks. We have a booth at IACR, and I cannot tell you how many people have called me to be like, you're exhibiting at AACR, we have these lists, or I want to help you with logistics or whatever. So there's such a noise there now in terms of that being a hook. So what we do is we actually open up the profile of the potential customer, screenshot it, send it to them. They're like, we're going to be at AACR. If you want this version for everyone else, then you can have it. So if you can think, and it's hard for me to speak generically to everyone, but if you can think of something like that that's so specific to them, that's going to really increase your call to action or your conversions as well. Plain text versus images, it's still okay to use plain text in an email distribution platform like Drip. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're sending things out using different distribution platforms, they're cool. Will this recording be visible? But yeah. How often is too often to send touch emails? Honestly, in my opinion, until they tell you to go away. It kind of depends though. Well, what is your budget for sending emails? That is one thing. But two, how many people could you sell to? Like, we're not selling t-shirts here. If I were selling t-shirts to the general public, then, you'd want to cut your losses. But if you're like us, you have a defined market, you have a defined list. So you're wanting you're going to want to nurture them and you want to keep going. It may not always be email though. You may want to email them. Oh, no, when you're in twice. You may want to send them a LinkedIn message. You may want to ring them. You may want to even do ads or something like that there. There's things that you can do in order to touch them without actually sending them emails over and over and over. You might want to see them at trade shows if you know that they're going to be there. So all of those are counted as a touch point as well. So there's more you can do there. Um, Length versus personalization, yes, definitely. That is such a balance, and keep it short. It's funny, anytime someone says, "Can you look at my email?" I'll be like, before I even look at it, I'm already going to tell you that it's too long. It's just too long. Just get it shorter. So, you're right. Try your best to get that personalization in, but I would err on the side of shorter for sure. Um, Doctor last name versus high first name. I can't show you lovely graphs of this. You're just going to have to believe me that I've done my IB testing, and high first name is night and day compared to dear doctor or certainly dear doctor. But dear doctor last name. The other thing is when you start to include things like doctors and salutations, they do change. And even for wonderful databases like SciLeads, things like keeping on top of whether someone has their doctorate or not, it can be tricky. So you're better to shy away for things that might have actually changed. So if you just say hi first name, it works much better. And that's just our own internal A/B testing. I haven't done this over, I don't want to say how many years now, 'cause it'll age me.
Sorry, Laura, there was one question that came in earlier in the Q&A chat box. What are your recommendations on cold emails versus cold LinkedIn messages?
Cool, right, okay. Cold LinkedIn messages are going to perform better than cold emails, but there's such a it's scale. If cold LinkedIn messages are 10% higher conversion, but you can send 100 emails to one LinkedIn message, then it's going to come out the same. So it's up to you in terms of, again, who you want to focus on. A nice rule of thumb could be that you send the emails to the academics because there's more of them. And if you're trying to get into Pfizer, then you use your LinkedIn. I don't, again, this could be probably its own webinar, and I probably will do a webinar on using LinkedIn to sell to scientists, but you have 120 requests, like connection requests that you can make every single week on LinkedIn before you go to LinkedIn jail. And LinkedIn jail isn't really LinkedIn jail like the way Insta jail is, where you don't get out for a certain period of time. LinkedIn jail, those credits just reset basically on a Monday morning or on a Sunday night. So if you don't use them, then they're gone. Like if your ISIS, if you're here in the UK, get them used, or they disappear. So what you want to do is have your 120 connections made, because if you send in mails, they're just not going to convert the same way actual messages do. We find that for our SDRs that just start in the company that don't have very good profiles because they're just brand new to the industry, they get about a 25% acceptance rate. So if you're trying to get into your company, you want to send a message or a connection rate to at least 4 of them, and statistically speaking, one of them will accept you, and then you can send your message. Same logic applies, and as I say, even more so when it comes to like I'm not a bot, because in LinkedIn it's just absolutely crazy. Personalizing it, you have no excuse because you have their beautiful LinkedIn profile right in front of you, and taking the time to do that. So LinkedIn is going to be better, is the bottom line, but email is more scalable. So for every dollar that's invested in email marketing, you get a $40 return. Like that's why everyone does it. It's why it's growing every year still, even though it's still like huge already. So it's a balance. Phone calls are fabulous as well, by the way. We see the similar conversion with LinkedIn and phone calls. Again, it's hard to get a skill set of someone that is willing or able to pick up the phone and do those things, and it takes more time because you have to actually ring people. So that's your balance. Um have you found if you click through links and attachments, if they don't know you, that is a thing for sure at the moment. That's why if we are attaching stuff, or link to stuff, I tend to try to link to the publication that actually shows where, that product was used, because people will trust that publication. Sending them a link that they don't trust isn't going to work, because rightly so, we all need to be really, really careful about clicking on stuff. So definitely using links that they trust is really, really important. Optimal subject lines when trying to book a meeting with cold prospects, academic researchers. If you have SciLeads, then go onto their literal SciLeads profile, find a poster that they've presented. If you can't find a poster, get a publication or some of their funding, stick that as the subject line. They're going to open that. Look at their network diagram, find someone that they work with, stick that in there. If you don't use SciLeads, then go on to just Google them, go onto like their website and see. It won't be as tailored, but at least you'll be able to find something that they did on that they mentioned on Twitter or on their LinkedIn or something to put into that subject line. The problem with that is you can't automate it. The nice thing about the reason why we literally made SciLeads so that you can do this personalization en masse, so that you can drop all those subject lines in en masse. I heard that saying you won't be there, but would have loved to amount the show also helps create interest. Yeah, we did a lovely webinar with a bunch of our clients a few months ago that I can link to as well. And one of them said that they get better response and leads from shows they don't go to using the SciLeads data than the shows that they were actually at and attending, because again, you're just referencing it. And it was a big thing that we learned during COVID as well. We thought that we could only meet people at shows we went to. And then we realized that messaging people at shows that we're not actually attending at the time because of COVID was still really powerful, because again, you were personalizing that based on people that were actually going to be there, putting that subject line there. So that's huge. For sure, it's a great way to do it. How many touches should each contact get before you see success and responses? Honestly, you can just keep going. I will run the experiment, I think, myself to see where it sort of tailors off. I wasn't able to find that graph where it plateaus. It seems to be like pretty flat as you just keep on going. So it's up to you, your appetite, how much resources you have, whether your MailChimp, Zoom credits, Slimlist, whatever on earth you're using to send these emails out is worthwhile because you're spending the money. But yeah. On which country is the US, the database as Europe and the US show differences in how they want to be addressed. So the data that I got is global data, so it'll be based on Europe and US. I obviously can only personally speak to myself. My personal anecdotes, at the time my territory was Scandinavia and the Baltics, so that was who I was selling to. But that said, we used then that same methodology across the company at the time, and it worked the same way in the US as it did with my colleagues in Germany, for example. So it did seem to be pretty standard across the board. Best times to emails, it's going to be the best time to reach your clients. The main thing, and this comes back as well in terms of LinkedIn, make sure you're sitting there when you send the message, even if you've automated it. Make sure you're there to respond, because that's again what's going to show that you're a bot or not a bot. If you email someone and they reply and you don't reply right straight back, you've lost their interest for one, because they were there at that time and you want to get on that and get that meeting booked. So the main answer is when you're free to do it, and the second answer is when they are available. I find personally that the beginning of the day or the end of the day works better, because there's a lot of noise in your email and people are in meetings during the day. But up to yourselves. A cheeky LinkedIn message on a Saturday that goes a long way, I have to say. And whenever you're doing your sort of pre-trade show outreach, the closer you could do it to the trade show is better. So if you're going to want to meet people, if you message them like a week before, they don't care. They're trying to get themselves sorted, get their bag packed, get all their work done, and get their kids sorted before they go. If you message them when they're traveling, they are likely to reply because they're sitting on a plane or a train or whatever. If you're brave enough to wait till the beginning of the show, like the actual day, they're sitting on like scientific talks, scrolling through their phone. They're much better response rates. So if you even can send the first message maybe the week before or a few days before, and then send the follow up the day of the show, that works really, really well. Have I ever tried ClickIn.io? No, and I don't know what it is, but I imagine it's some sort of automation. LinkedIn are getting very, very, very sensitive about that. I don't know if you saw that they kicked Apollo and Seamless AI off the platform this week, which is a bit dramatic. And they're really, really cutting down on people that are using automation tools on LinkedIn. So I would be very careful about doing it, honestly. Sorry, Novin, I'm just running through them all. I have another list here on the Q&A. What are your recommendations? Cold emails or LinkedIn? Yeah, we covered that. Available, yeah, blah 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 blah. How do links perform? I've heard links can cause emails to bounce. If you do too many links, for sure, it can absolutely make things bounce. But it depends again what is your desire from that email? What's the desired outcome? Is it to drive traffic to your website, in which case you're going to want to have a link there. I know like HubSpot, for example, can't actually really accurately determine the open rates of an email unless you actually bring them onto the website and they open up a page. So that might be one reason why you want them on. It also might be that you want to drop a cookie on them so that you can run retargeted ads after if you're trying to. It may be that you have like an automation process in-house where you don't want to pass every lead to the sales team. They want them to be much warmer, in which case you want them to track them on the website to score them based on what resources they download. So it kind of depends on what you want from the email, but generally speaking, having a link in it or one or two isn't going to make your emails points. No, having a load of them is. How do you do this for hundreds of prospects? Do you have any tips for this? By SciLeads. I know you're already a SciLeads user, so that's grand. Or yeah, just I don't know, set aside 5 hours and pour yourself a glass of wine. But I think buying SciLeads is probably easier if you want to do this at scale. How often do you come across people being offended by using their poster titles? Is actually quite a funny one. I've had situations where our clients have sent an email to say, I'm really interested in your poster. Would you come and see me at a booth? And then the people come and they're like, I need to actually like read their poster and actually find out. That's why it's really useful if at the booth you have a scientist there that can genuinely speak to the science and they can think on their feet. But no, people aren't offended about using their poster titles that they're publicly available. You know yourself, if you're doing a nice presentation, you're feeling a little bit fancy anyway, so you quite like when people actually see that and reference that. So it's always good. What would happen if you change the messaging to be all about them versus us? I mean, an example you showed, I was like, I once made Albie in Boston. You can find out more information. Yes, I've read differing research on this. One says that you should use like eyes and stuff about you because you're the person that's selling to them, and people are more likely to respond to you as a person rather than the company. That example I give where the client said that she took the meeting because Maddie was politely persistent. She said it was because Maddie was politely persistent, like genuinely she like wanted to get on that meeting to help Maddie. So that is a big thing when you're saying about eyes and ears. There is a lot of a train of thought, and it's a bit different from the examples we were using that talks about, addressing a problem as well in the email. So like, I wanted to chat to you at the upcoming conference. A lot of our clients don't get ROI on trade shows anymore, and this is a way to overcome it. That can be a very powerful way as well, and that could be something that we talk about in the future in terms of how to do more generic messages. But yeah, I didn't go into that because I was trying to like tailor on the experimentation and the data in this one, but we can go into that in another day. For follow-ups, what would be good to include in the 4 sentences you mentioned, links or documents? No, like if you can try and find something that they did that shows that you literally care and that you're watching them, and then not creepy way, but like I saw on LinkedIn that you did this. Congratulations. I saw that you received this grant. Congratulations. I saw that the company received VC funding. I saw that you got phase 2 in this clinical trial. Like that's what we mean by about using those sentences and really tailoring it and adding value. Or it could be, I just wanted to ping you because this new case study came up and I thought it would be really interesting for you. I thought you'd really enjoy this. So anything that feel can like add value is really helpful. Should you introduce in the email if you haven't met or go straight to why you're emailing them? Honestly, I can't give you any data on this, but if I wouldn't really care who I was, to be honest. Hi, I'm Laura. We don't care. Who are you messaging me about? Oh, or what are you messaging me about? So I personally wouldn't go to the bother of introducing myself. I find this as well when we've had new colleagues come from SciLeads and they're like, oh, I'm taking over from so and so, and like honestly, maybe if the person's like a different gender, they maybe notice, but generally speaking, they don't really notice that their sales rep has changed. To be honest, they don't care enough about us as much as we would like them to. So, I wouldn't actually bother introducing. But for all of this, A/B test it and look at the data and double down on what works. Data on effectiveness of providing value in your email, offering free trial. This is really interesting. So, and it's actually another psychology experiment. So they did an experiment where they had these like beads and they give or pearls and they give the pearls away for free as part of a freebie or they sold the pearls. And then they polled everyone after to assess how much they valued the pearls. And the people that got the pearls for free, they undervalued it by 35% because they got it for free. So the perception was that it was of less value. And the way that they overcame this, they repeated the experiment and it said pearls worth whatever amount in dollars or whatever. And that kept it them whenever they pulled them at the end. They kept them at the same value regardless of whether they were free or not. So absolutely free trials, wonderful, all great. But definitely if you're offering anything or giving free samples away, make sure you put the value of what that free sample is so that people actually value it. The other trick is if you can try get them to commit to something beforehand. So like if I give you these samples, are you available to run them next week and have them verbally commit, give them, you let them give you something before you give them something as well. Can be very helpful. Do I find LinkedIn emails better than email outreach? Do I use the same type of messaging? I find emails would be better than emails, but direct messages in LinkedIn are better than emails. And do I use the same approach? Yes, absolutely. But you can't do it at scale by the nature of LinkedIn. So again, there tend to be more personalized even than the emails that we send. I know you said only one call to action. What if I've got several links, like request a demo, watch a webinar, book a call? How should I organize and present them effectively? Send one email with one of them, send another email with another one, send another email with another one, work out which of those three emails got you better conversion and stick to one. Like putting all three of those in is going to reduce the amount of people that actually click on them.
Mhm.
Does including a whole ball as well not take up valuable email preview space in the first sentence? You would imagine, but you saw the data on Gong that it increases the conversion, so we have to go by the data. So, I would include it because that's how it played out whenever they did the experiment. What are GDPR regulations limitations regarding sending cold emails? So GDPR is a funny one because everyone interprets it slightly differently. So the boring answer is whatever your company decides are the GDPR limitations. Generally speaking, GDPR makes us better at this. So before GDPR, we could have just taken our old CRM, God knows what the research they were doing, or if either we're still in research, and we could have sent them a generic message about anything, which actually counter to absolutely everything we've gone through in this entire call. GDPR means like for a legitimate interest in things that you need to actually tailor your message for someone that you would think is legitimately interested in it. So you have to personalize it. So in a way, GDPR just makes us better at this job. But yeah, boring answer is it's up to yourselves and in terms of what your company has decided is an appropriate strategy. When should you go into detail about what your company can offer as a best for follow-ups, emails, or replies? It depends again on your email. But yes, if for me, when I'm trying to get a meeting, what I found was whenever I was sending these meetings out to Copenhagen, they're busy people. I'm sending messages to PIs. You know how busy PIs are. If they said, yeah, I'd love to meet you, they're not like just wanting to have a chat and a cup of tea. Like they literally have a reason why they wanted to meet you. So I found that they just pre-qualified themselves. So even ones that I kind of thought to myself, why am I going to meet them? There was always a reason when I went in. They were like, oh, we need this because of this. Even if I could see that they didn't have a grant, then it would transpire that there was like a core facility grant or something that they were like getting in on or something like that. So they will like pre-qualify themselves to an extent as well. So I personally would let them do that and not go too much in the company because again, I know you think the company's all really interesting and all, but really they just want to know what's the product, how can I help them with their problem, really is what they want to do. Do we use Power Automate to automate our emails? We actually don't. We send all of our emails individually, but that's because this is kind of our thing and we have the resources to do so. We use the screenshots of the SciLeads platform in order to capture the attention and rise above the noise, as I mentioned, and there's not really a sophisticated way to automate that, and it's worthwhile for us. It's worthwhile the time of taking those screenshots. So we don't use them, but you know, you guys can depending on the resources. When is it okay to use graphics or images? For example, if you're launching a new product, you saw from that graph that it does decline per image. So, you know, putting one image in is still better than, you know, putting three images in, for example. So it does decline. So if you want to put one in, it will maybe lower your conversion a bit. but if it helps tell your story, depending on what you're trying to sell or send, is grand. Remember that they won't necessarily come up, and people probably have to go and allow HTML in order for the image to come up. So never assume that they can see it. I know myself, I don't bother accepting the HTML for anything. So make sure that the narrative is there that makes sense without the image actually being shown. Do you see any value in using a customer testimonial in a customer testimonial in the message? Absolutely. Like that's literally what we're talking about when it comes to, you know, everybody else is doing it, the trials and the QVC channel, and also having that tailored to them specifically, like the trials in that particular room. So customer testimonials are golden. And then having a customer testimonial specific to them is even better. So the tighter that you can get to them, and again, that comes about knowing their research and knowing them in order to find that the best fit. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that is the bulk of the questions. Thank you very much, everyone. I did tell everyone I wouldn't keep them for an hour, and I've now kept everyone for an hour, so apologies for that. But at least it's not quite over the hour. If you have any other questions, feel free to follow up with me and myself and Novin directly. We love this stuff. This is our favorite thing to talk about. So as you can see, for me, whether or not for an hour. So